Hi, welcome back to my kitchen. We have a very special recipe today. It's Lamingtons, and I bet you're wondering, if you're from the United States, what the heck is a Lamington? Well, a Lamington is a piece of cake that has been coated in chocolate and rolled in coconut like this one. And I'm going to show you how to make them today. I have really fallen in love with these since I started making this recipe a couple of weeks ago, and I think you're going to fall in love with them too. My mission is to bring these to the United States. So let's get started making our Lamingtons. Okay, so I have my food processor set up. I've made this in a stand mixer as well, and it comes out just as well in a food processor versus a stand mixer. I had an incident with my glass bowl and my stand mixer, so I thought this would be easier for you to see what's going on. I apologize, I started filming and I dumped some things in and I didn't realize it wasn't set up right. So in the bowl here, I have 9 tablespoons of butter, so that is 1 stick plus a tablespoon. There's 3/4 of a cup of white sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I like to blend in my vanilla and my salt when I'm creaming my butter and sugar. So I'm gonna just put the top on my food processor and I am going to cream that. And we're gonna do that until it's done. It's gonna take a couple minutes and then I'm gonna scrape the sides down. We want this really nicely creamed. I think one of the biggest mistakes I've made in recipes in the past, because I just tend to be the kind of person who throws stuff together, but I can't do that for you guys. I need to make this, perfect, is I don't think I've creamed stuff long enough. And the other thing that you really, really need to do is have everything at room temperature. So my butter is at room temperature, which I cheated and put it in the microwave because I never take butter out in advance long enough for it to be soft. So I did that. I'm going to show you a trick with my eggs too that I do. But we're going to keep creaming this. And right now, I don't think I have to scrape the sides down because it's actually not clumping too much, but I will scrape them down in a second. But it looks like you can get a pretty good shot of what's going on in there, which is exactly why I'm using this nice, clear food processor. And again, it's going to turn out the same way. But I bet some of you haven't tried making cakes in your food processor. You can do cakes, cookies. It's awesome. All right, I'm going to scrape the bowl down. I'll be right back. Okay, I wanted to show the texture of this too, because you can kind of tell it's not properly creamed. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's grainy still. So we want this to be as smooth as possible, and the texture is still grainy, so we are going to process it a little bit more. All right. Our mixture is creamed properly. It's still a little grainy, but that's kind of normal. But you can see it's a lot smoother than it was. And now we are going to start adding in the eggs. So this is my trick for you guys. I have a bowl of water here that I have, it's a very close up for you guys, that I have let my eggs sit in, and it was hot water, not like boiling hot, but hot out of the tap. And I put my cold eggs in there. And if you do that, then your eggs come to room temperature and you don't have to let them sit out, because there's all these worries about salmonella and all sorts of things if you leave your eggs out too long. And who the heck remembers to take your eggs out of the refrigerator on time? Anyway, I know that I don't. So we're going to add these eggs one at a time. And we are going to thoroughly combine the mixture after we add each egg. And we're going to add an egg and we're going to scrape down the sides. And we're doing all this so that we get a beautiful, tender cake batter. Some recipes I read even had you just dumping everything in a mixer and just going for it. And I mean, I guess you could do that, but I think this will come out a lot better. That's thoroughly incorporated, as you can see, and I'm going to scrape the sides down and then we will add another egg. Egg number 2 is going in now. I don't know what made me think of putting my eggs in water to get them to room temperature. It just came to me one day and I was like, wait, that's a really good idea. And if you use hot water that's out of the tap, it's not going to cook your eggs, but then you don't have to let them sit out. So I'm proud of that one. All right, our next egg is in. Just going to keep whirling it here. Again, we want it thoroughly incorporated. We don't want any graininess. By the time we're done with this stage, there should be no graininess in the batter. So you can see it's starting to turn into a liquid because we're adding a lot of liquid to this. And again, I'm going to scrape this down. Make sure you scrape the bottom, by the way. I should have told you that as well. You want to make sure you get the bottom around the blade because stuff can kind of stick down there. But I'm going to finish scraping this down and we'll add our final egg. And now our final egg is going to go in here. And if you're worried that you're going to get shells in your mixture, then you can absolutely crack them into a bowl first. I just usually don't, and if it happens, I fish them out. So looks like we're good. Top goes on, and then this is the final egg. Beautiful. One final scrape down and pulse, and then we're gonna add our dry ingredients and our milk. Okay, so here is our texture. It looks really soupy right now, but you can see some air bubbles, but there are no grains on that spatula. There's no grains of sugar that you can see, and that's exactly what we're doing. I should note too that if you do this in a mixer, it is gonna have a slightly different texture at this point, but the final product will be the same, so you're fine. All right, so in we have 1 tablespoon of baking powder, which seems like a lot, but it doesn't have the saltiness that baking soda has. So it just provides a good amount of leavening for your batter. And believe me, it's fine to have that amount. I've tested it, we're good. And this is 1 3/4 cups of flour. We're just gonna add half of this, about half. We're gonna just pulse this in 2 separate little stages. So I'm gonna add all that stuff. Give it a quick pulse. We're gonna add half of our milk, which is a 1/2 cup of milk. We're gonna put about half of that in right now. Give it another quick pulse. This is strong, so you don't need to do this too heavily. Give it a quick scrape. We don't need to do the thorough scrape right now. We're just giving it a quick scrape so that we can add the rest of our flour. So all of the rest of the flour going in now. Mine's a little stuck to the bottom of my container, but no problem there. Again, quick pulse. And the rest of our 1/2 cup of milk is going in right now. Pulse it twice. We're really, at this point, you do not want to overmix the batter. I'm giving it a final scrape down. And again, make sure you get the bottom of that bowl by the blade. And believe me, your spatula will probably get a little chewed up from doing this, because mine has, but you know, spatulas are replaceable. It's okay. All right, last scrape down. 2 quick pulses, we are done. And now we're gonna scrape this batter into our container. So I'll be right back because I gotta reset up some things for you. Okay, this is a pan that I have buttered and floured. And it's important, especially with cakes like this, to do that. If you don't do that, your cake is gonna stick and it's gonna be real difficult to recover from that. So look at the texture of this. It's such a nice batter. It's like perfect. Almost looks like a pancake batter consistency-wise, but it is smooth, creamy, no grains, no lumps. And I'm gonna get all of the batter in there. So I'm gonna come back in a second because I have to take the blade out of this thing and get everything in the pan, and then I'll show you how to spread it out. So excited. I have really fallen in love with this recipe. All right, all the batter is in here now, and we need to spread this out to the corners. I tried this recipe also with buttermilk, and I didn't think it tasted as good. The texture wasn't as good. The first time I made it, I didn't add much salt because a couple of the recipes I was testing didn't really put salt in. And if you do that, and it also had more sugar in it, and it just tasted like sugar. It had no flavor. So I'm super happy. This is a very buttery, moist, delicious cake. You can definitely use it for a birthday cake or other types of cakes that you want to make. It's a really good recipe. And I will be using it for other stuff also. So this is probably the trickiest part. You just want to make sure you get it into the corner of your buttered and floured baking pan. This is a 9x13, I believe. Can't turn it over now and check. So we really want a consistent layer of cake. And the one thing that is tricky about this is it is still probably going to try to dome on you. And I have not figured out how to have that not happen a little bit. So I tend to try to make the batter a little bit thicker around the edges. And then the middle, I'll probably try to thin it out just a little bit. And then we'll kind of give this a little whack on the counter too. Okay, I'm just giving my pan a little jiggle. You don't want to whack it too hard because if you do, the flour that you have on the outside is going to start falling onto your cake. And I'm shaking everything, so apologize, but that's pretty level. Again, I know it's going to dome anyway. This is going to go into a 350-degree oven for 30 to 35 minutes. Less than that, it's not probably going to bake through. And I will show it to you when it gets out. So excited. All right, this beautiful cake just came out of the oven. It is baked perfectly. It actually didn't dome. So it domed a little bit, but it's not too bad. You know, I always want perfection. It's gonna taste amazing. I'm very excited. So we're gonna let this cool off in the pan for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Then we're gonna turn it out of the pan and cool it on a wire rack. So I will rejoin you when we're ready for that step. See you in a bit. Our cake has been resting for about 10 minutes and it is time to unmold it. So the first thing I'm doing is just taking a knife and I'm running it around the edges. And this cake will probably still stick a little bit even though we prepared our pan. That's why it's so critical to prepare a pan. And this is even like a nonstick baking dish that we're in here. But first thing I'm gonna do is kind of test it to see if it's releasing, which it's not yet. But so I have the knife. It's really gonna be hard for you to see what I'm doing. Let me tilt the camera up so that you can see. So I'm taking this top edge here, move it up a little bit more. And I take my knife and I stick it in and I pull just like a little bit. And that way I can feel if the cake is releasing or not. And I'll do that on the other top edge here. Stick it in and give it a little pull. See where it's sticking. Okay, I can feel that that side is releasing. Okay, I think it's ready. So I'm gonna take a wire rack like this. Tilt this back down for you guys. Here we go. I have a couple wire racks and that is because we're gonna do a couple things. So I'm gonna take this and I'm going to invert it. And our cake came out a little teeny bit stuck to the bottom. That's totally fine. That's like hardly anything. And you can snack on that. So there you go. So we inverted it this way, but we actually really want to flip it over again. And so I'm putting this wire rack on the top. I'm just gonna give it a flip. And now we are done with our cake maneuvering. If you don't have a whole bunch of wire racks, you could just have put it on a counter and then you could just scoot it onto the wire rack that you have. I have a whole bunch because I'm always making cookies and all that stuff. The reason you don't want to cool it with this side down, this side's pretty delicate. And if you do that, I find that it gets kind of smushy and weird. And the other thing I am going to do is I am going to elevate this a little bit because I find, so I've got two containers that I am just sticking one on like either side of this. And there's a reason I'm doing this. I find with these wire racks, I'm gonna show you the side of one of those if I can. This has hardly any room between the counter and the cake. And if you just put your cake on this kind of wire rack and then you stick it on the counter, it's gonna steam underneath. And I know this from experience. So I thought today, sometimes I just really make a really ridiculous looking stack of various wire racks, but I'm like, why don't I just use plastic containers? And so I put one on each side underneath, and now I have several inches underneath my cake. So it's still warm under here, but the steam isn't gonna come back up and moisten the bottom of my cake. So there's a little tip for you. We are going to let this cool absolutely completely now. That's gonna take probably about 30 minutes. And then we are gonna cut it into our cubes. Here we go, see you in a bit. Our cake has cooled completely, and now we are going to cut it into our squares. So the first thing we're gonna do is cut the edges off. I actually this is a meat knife, and I actually prefer it for this. So we're just gonna carefully cut down the sides, and you can eat these as scraps. You'll probably want to, and I usually do. I find this versus a serrated knife gives you a much less jagged cut. So that's why we're using this knife versus a serrated knife. Cut as squarely as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. My brain always wants to be perfect. And I am gonna try because I'm filming this. Okay. Let me set these cake scraps aside after I taste one. So now you have a decision to make. You can decide to fill these, or you can leave them unfilled. If you're gonna fill them, my recommendation is to cut this in half. I'm trying to get this perfectly in half if I can. Of course, I'm gonna touch the camera. And then I'm gonna cut this one in half carefully. Here, I'll try to scoot this guy over to the side so I can show you what I'm doing. I'm going this way now. Just start by carefully running your knife through the middle. And then you can kind of increase the depth at which you're doing that. And hopefully we'll get a pretty good slice down the middle. Are we there? We're almost there. You'll feel the resistance if you haven't cut all the way through. Okay, beautiful. Cut through. And I didn't do a perfect job. That's okay. Who cares? It's gonna taste delicious. So this is raspberry jam. So if you are going to do this for the whole cake, then you're gonna want to use a cup of raspberry jam. This is a half cup because we're doing half. And what I have done is I have heated this in the microwave straight out of the fridge. It's just too solid. So you're never gonna be able to spread it on there. So I heated it in the microwave. I gave it a good stir with my spoon to break up most of the lumps. This is seedless, by the way. I hate with a passion raspberry seeds. I don't think they're elegant or tasty or a good texture in anything really. So I always buy the seedless raspberry jam, or if I'm making a coulis or something at home, I always strain the seeds out. I just don't think they're nice. And if you like them, then go for it. You could use other jams. You could use strawberry. This is a variation. I wouldn't say it's not traditional, but I found several recipes where you can like cut your Lamingtons in half and fill them with cream and jam and whatever. So I thought that I would show you at least just half with the jam. Okay, so now we're just gonna stick our top back on there. And I'm gonna scoot that one to the side so it sets for a second. And we're gonna get to cutting. So you can see there is a little variance between the thickness. It's much thicker here than on the side. Again, I don't really know how to prevent that from happening perfectly, but that is okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to get 24 pieces. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this in thirds, this direction. I'm gonna try my very best not to bump the camera. I can tell this piece is a little thicker than the other ones already, but whatever. All right, and then we're just gonna cut it in half. Make sure it's all stacked as perfectly as possible. All right, cutting in half, and then we will cut these in half again. Some of the recipes I saw were very interesting. They had you cutting these in like 15 pieces, which would mean these were huge. And we're still gonna dip these in chocolate and coconut. So they are gonna be even bigger than this cube size here. So I like 24 for a 9 by 13. Sorry, smacked the camera. So here is our jelly filled section. And we're gonna do the same thing, and you guys can watch while I try not to have a massive heart attack getting these perfect for you. Okay, what am I doing first? I'm doing the thirds. All right, there's one. You can see at least though with this knife, you can see how nice it is. Again, a serrated knife I feel like is just gonna give you jaggedy edges, and something nice and sharp like a meat knife, it just goes right through it. So it's great. Okay, that was our thirds. Now we're gonna do halves. These are a little more, sorry, I'm hitting the camera with the bottom of my knife. These are a little more delicate than the unfilled ones, so just be aware of that and be careful. I'm gonna get this one from the side. Trying to avoid the camera. Okay, last one. I did okay. It's not perfect, but I feel like, you know, I did pretty well. So what we're gonna do now is start loading up our wire rack friends with these Lamington pieces. And the reason we are doing that is because these have to go in the freezer. If I tried to dip these right now into chocolate, I have one that fell apart a little, that's okay. If I try to dip these in chocolate right now, they would just fall apart. There'd be crumbs everywhere. It would be a total disaster. So these are gonna go on my wire rack like this. I'm just gonna put them nicely. Then these are going right into the freezer, and they're gonna freeze for an hour and 20 to an hour and 30 minutes. And I will see you back then, because then it is time to dip them in our ganache. Actually, we need to make our ganache first, which we'll do. And then we will dip them and roll them in coconut, and they're so good. I can't wait to show you the rest of these steps. See you in a bit. Okay, I promise this is the world's easiest ganache. In this measuring cup, I have a pint of cream, which basically comes out to 2 cups. And I've heated it in the microwave until it's just below boiling. And to that, I'm adding just 1 packet of chocolate chips. And I put them in a measuring cup because when I do it straight from the bag, I tend to splash it everywhere. So it's just like a standard bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Good quality, please. Don't get the ones that have the standard chocolate chip cookie recipe on them, please, because those are not good quality. I'm adding a tablespoon of unsalted butter and a teaspoon of vanilla, which I'm just gonna eyeball. And I'm gonna let this sit in here until the chocolate has melted. So that's probably gonna take, oops, I missed some chocolate chips. How can I do that? It's terrible, we don't wanna miss any. That's probably gonna take about 10 minutes. So I'll just let it sit here for a while. And when I think my chocolate chips are melted, I will come back and I will show you how we're gonna whisk this and what temperature we want this to be at. See you in a second. Okay, it's been a few minutes and I'm gonna start carefully whisking this. There's a reason I did it in this big 4-cup measuring cup also. It's because we can directly dip our Lamingtons in here, which makes it a heck of a lot easier. And also, if this isn't hot enough, I can put it back into the microwave. So I'm going slowly because I don't want this to slosh out of my container, and I'm a little klutzy. So that could happen. And I don't want to make a big mess. So we're gonna go slowly till our chocolate starts dissolving. If you've watched some of my other videos, you've seen me do this with like a smaller measuring cup and a fork. I don't know. It's like, I don't like doing extra dishes. So if you can get it all done in one container, then I'm super happy. That's my idea of great. I don't have a dishwasher at the house that I'm renting, so I am extra aware of how many dishes are coming my way, because the more dishes I create, the more hand washing I get to do. This is actually a good temperature. I don't think I'm gonna have to put this back in the microwave. You can see though, if you look at the side of my bowl, you can see like some bits of chocolate. We want to incorporate this until there are no bits of chocolate showing. So we also don't want to get a whole bunch of air into this, but it is going to sit for a while, so that's okay. I feel pretty good about that. That looks good. Again, there's some small little chocolate pieces, but those are all going to dissolve. So what we're going to do now, because we still have about 30 minutes or so till our cake can come out of the freezer. This is going to cool off a little bit. We'll see what temperature it is when the cake comes out of the freezer. We don't want it to be cold because we don't want it to be too thick, but we also don't want it to be hot like it is right now. So I might pop it in the fridge for a few minutes if I need to. And next time I see you, we are going to be ready to dip and finish our Lamingtons, which is the fun part. See you in a minute. All right, it's time to dip. This is so much fun. Okay, the ganache has cooled off a little bit. It's still warm, but it's not hot. And it's gonna cool off more because we're gonna dip these frozen pieces of cake in there. So this is the way that I've found it to be easier. So we're gonna take the cake and I'm gonna push it down till it's right above the top so that I can grab it and then stick it back on its little shelf there. So again, I'm going around the other side because I think I was blocking the camera a little bit. So again, we're gonna go down right till we get to the top, pick it up, and do it again. I'll show you again. This one's got a little cake fluff on the side there. Go in the mixture, go right to the top, take it out, and repeat. And we're gonna keep doing this for all of them. And I saw lots of ways people suggested doing icing with icing sugar, and which is powdered sugar, by the way, melted chocolate, a combination of both. I didn't see any that were ganache like what I'm doing, but this works super well. So I do hope you try it this way. Frankly, I thought with just the icing, it was really sweet, and I don't feel like the coconut stuck in a good way either. I wasn't super happy with that. So this way, you're gonna get a gorgeous coating on the outside and it's going to be perfect. And that is why we are doing this. You don't need a fork. You don't need any fancy equipment. We're just going in. If your fingers get chocolate on them, it's okay. And don't worry, we're gonna take care of the top in just a second. But I, again, found this was the easiest way to do this. So I'm showing you my special method. All right, I'm gonna go get my non-stuffed ones out of the freezer. I'll be right back. All right, I have my non-raspberry jam filled Lamingtons out of the freezer now. I just left them in the freezer while I was doing those. I also should have mentioned that I covered my surface in foil. Just makes for a super easier cleanup, so you're not having to do as much work. All right, I'll finish dipping these and then I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do to cover the top. All right, all of them are dipped. And now to cover the top, I'm gonna take a spoon and I'm just going to pour it over the top. And because we dipped all the way up to the very tippy top, then it makes it super easy to finish covering them. You could just pour it over them like with your measuring cup, but you're gonna get chocolate everywhere if you do that. And yeah, I have done that. And if you can see some like naked sides, you can just tilt your spoon a little bit and coat those. It's super easy. I'll do a couple of the ones that aren't stuffed back here so you can see the same thing, but it's exactly the same process. We're gonna do the ganache on the top, spoon it around the sides if we need to. You can check that afterward. Kind of recommend doing all these, then you can check and fix your mistakes. A lot of the recipes, in fact, I think almost all of them were like, oh, you have to dip it in the chocolate and you have to quickly dip it in the coconut. And you know what? When you do that, the coconut just clumps and it like goes down the side because it's heavy. And we actually are gonna just take a couple minutes and finish these, and you don't want to put them in the coconut right away, because if this ganache sets up just a little bit, then you have a much more stable outside for your coconut to stick to, and it's going to become a perfect little square instead of a sad disaster. So if you are going to use icing, which you can do a thin icing with cocoa powder and powdered sugar. If you're going to do that, I still recommend taking the time to let it set up for a couple minutes. There's absolutely no rush in rolling it in the coconut. It's not going to harden to where you can't do it. That's just almost impossible, I think, frankly. So everything turns out really nicely when you do it this way. I'm going to finish covering these and then we're going to roll it in the coconut. Okay, I finished dipping my Lamingtons and checking the sides and fixing them and everything. So let's have a little quick discussion about coconut. This needs to have a very fine, sometimes called desiccated coconut on the outside. You don't want to buy sweetened shredded coconut. You don't want to buy regular shredded coconut. The funny thing is, the only one that I could find that was basically desiccated coconut was labeled as shredded coconut. But let me show you how fine this is. Look at that texture. This is like, they're almost like panko breadcrumb size, right? We're not looking for those big shreds of coconut. Definitely the unsweetened. This is actually like an organic one that I got because it was the only one that I could find that was actually the right texture and consistency. It's very dry. And like I said, it's about the size of a panko breadcrumb. So our Lamingtons have been sitting for a couple minutes, and you want them to sit because you want that excess icing to come off the sides. We don't want icing running everywhere. And if it's too runny, then what's going to happen again is that the coconut is going to cling to that, and then it's going to glop down the side and be really not a happy, we're not going to have happy Lamingtons. And the beautiful thing about using a ganache is it sets up pretty quickly because the cakes are cold. So let's start. I'm grabbing a fork and I'm going to use it to lift up one of my cakes from the bottom. And I'm going to use my hands a little bit too. And then I'm going to take it, I'm going to dump it upside down in my coconut. And I am going to, and I usually get coconut everywhere, and I'm trying to do this on camera, so it's probably going to be even worse. So basically what I'm doing is I'm coating all the sides and then I'm rolling it over. Making sure the sides are all coated. You don't really want to touch it too much with your hands. That's going to press the coconut in. And there we have the perfect Lamington. There's actually like a little spot on that side. If you have like any bald spots that you're not happy with, just go ahead and re-roll those. That's another thing. Again, the ganache is very forgiving that way. And when we're done, we just put it back on our rack and it's going to dry. So let me show you another one. I'll show you one of the ones that's filled, because those ones, theoretically, you'd think they're maybe a little trickier, but they're pretty similar. So dumping it top down into the ganache, scooping the coconut up the sides. I'm trying not to have it go on the floor. Filming is there's always something funny that you're like trying to work around. And I do have coconut going on the floor, by the way, anyway, regardless of what I'm trying to do. And again, making sure you're happy with it. And there is our perfect Lamington. And that is going to go back on our tray. I'm going to finish rolling these in kind of a different way so that I don't get chocolate everywhere. Occasionally you're going to get a lot of pieces of the ganache in the coconut. And when that happens, you can just pick those up and take them out because those will just make it clumpy. So I'll finish rolling these. I'll show what they look like and then we're going to taste. All right, I am done. These are going to set up for a couple hours. The ganache is still going to be pretty soft until that happens. But as you can see, no weird lumps of coconut going down the side. There's lots of chocolate underneath them. Ideally, what I should have done is gotten a completely new set of racks and transferred them onto there as I was dipping them in coconut, but my brain just didn't figure that out until after I was finished, but that's fine. They're perfectly coated, they're beautiful, and I'm gonna clean all this up. I'm gonna let these set, and then we are going to taste them. I can't wait. They're super delicious. These freeze really well, by the way. All you have to do after the ganache sets up is wrap them in plastic wrap and put them in a Tupperware and stick them in your freezer. So anyway, I will see you when it's time to taste. I can't wait. All right, it's time to taste our Lamingtons. They're so good, trust me. I have had a lot more than I thought. Oh, I got a stuffed one. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get one with the filling or a plain one, but I got a stuffed one. I'm pretty excited. I'm so proud of myself for this recipe because the ganache, it just makes these. If you haven't made Lamingtons ever, try this. If you've made Lamingtons, but you've done it with an icing on the outside, give this recipe a try. I just think that it gives it this really amazing texture contrast. And then they're sweet, but they're not overly sweet and sugary. So I really hope you guys try this. It's so fun to explore recipes from other cultures and countries. And you can find this and all of my recipes on thegamblingchef.com. And please be sure to subscribe to my channel on YouTube and follow me on Facebook and like my videos. It really helps me out. I'll see you guys next time.